And I didn't hear from Quincy from the others, although he usually comes right. It's open, Matt's just doing that so you guys don't even have to touch the pieces.
All right, on that note,
It's gonna be Queens.
I'll call the city council regular meeting for April 15, 2020 to order. We have, as a city of Holland, suspended or put a pause on most of our board, commission, and committee meetings, but we have made the determination to continue to hold city council meetings, or just our regular meetings, and to hold them in person. There's a lot of value in my mind in being able to do that. I'm sure that all of us have been on enough Zoom meetings and video conferences over the last several weeks to know that there are issues that come with those. So I want to thank everyone for coming here tonight. We have, for those people who are watching at home, made accommodations for social distancing, both for council members. We are all at least 6 feet apart, but then also for the staff members that are here as well. And if any member of the public comes, they have the opportunity to speak in front of council and to maintain that social distancing. We have set up a special system for public comment. We are encouraging members of the public to stay at home during the meetings. They can always come to the meeting if they choose to, but we try to make it as easy as possible for them. If you're a member of the general public and you wanted to participate in public comment, we do have an email. We're still monitoring that during the course of the meeting, and that is publiccomments@cityofholland.com. And with that, I'd like to start with a roll call vote. Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Byrd,
Present.
Peters,
Here.
Garcia,
Here.
Truthfully,
Here.
Arnshorst. Here. Corbin, Hoekstra,
Here.
Raymond. Here. Mayor Box.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you very much. We're going to start the meeting as we have for many years. First with an opening prayer, and this week it's going to be led by Councilmember Garcia, and then immediately following that will be the Pledge of Allegiance. We'd ask that you join us if you'd like.
Heavenly Father, we're grateful for your goodness and your continued faithfulness, and during the season where so many things are uncertain week to week, God, we continue to ask for your guidance and your continued protection. We pray for those who are on the front lines, those who are putting a lot of their energy at the expense of their families, their family time, while many of us get to make the best of being at home. They're working hard and aggressively to combat this coronavirus situation throughout really our country and the world. But here locally, Lord God, we lift them up in prayer, all those healthcare workers and providers, the emergency responders. Would you continue to strengthen them? Would you continue to sustain them? Would you continue to provide them the endurance that they need as they face patients who are fighting this? And would you also allow them to find rest in those moments where they're able to find the downtime and see their families? Lord God, grace them with that. And for us as well, who continue to meet and make decisions so that the city can continue to move forward in the things that it needs to provide the essential services for our community members. Help us to also be wise in the decisions that we make. God, we're grateful for a team that is more than capable at handling the business of the city outside of these meetings. For the leadership team and the staff, God, continue to provide them also the endurance as they make the decisions and take the actions necessary to keep us in line and to keep us healthy and vibrant as a community. Pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And the next item that we have on the agenda are our consent agenda items. Those items that are listed on the agenda with an asterisk are considered to be routine and will be enacted with just one motion unless stated otherwise by a member of the public or a council member. If any member of the public, and actually we don't have any members of the public here this evening, but if a member of council would like an item removed from the consent agenda, we will do so and then deal with it in its normal sequence on the regular agenda. And those items that are in bold on the agenda are considered to be non-consent. Kathy, would you please read the consent agenda?
Consent agenda items. A, absences excused. Councilmember Corbin. Approval of minutes, April 1, 2020, regular meeting. Board of Public Works. Black River Substation land leased. Transportation. Adopt proposed budget for the 16th Street Improvement Project. Transportation, approve agreement with Maplewood Intercounty Drain Board in support of the 16th Street Improvement Project. Transportation, approve drain easement to the Maplewood Intercounty Drain Board in support of the 16th Street Improvement Project. Finance, purchasing, declare items as surplus. Finance, set public hearing for Holland Energy Fund budget. Finance, approve credit card processing agreement. Finance, tax abatement, set public hearing for PA 198 tax abatement for GHSP, Inc., 701 Waverly Road.
Thank you very much. As I said before, we do not have any members of the general public here this evening, but is there any item on the agenda that a council member would like removed from the consent agenda and put onto the regular agenda? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda.
Motion to adopt.
Oh, I'm sorry. Wait, sorry about that.
I don't know if it's necessary to pull it off. I had a question regarding 4E about transportation on 16th Street. I just wanted to know when that project was to start. I didn't see any timing in there.
Can we get you that answer after the meeting? Would it make a
absolutely.
difference on your vote one way or the other?
Will not.
All right, we'll get you that answer then immediately after the meeting or as soon as we can.
Sounds good.
Thereafter. All right.
It's not starting really soon, so I'll get a better estimate on the date, but it's not like it starts next week or anything like that.
Okay, thanks.
Great. Any other items anyone wants to remove from the consent agenda and to put place on the regular agenda? All right, then I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as read.
Motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
Moved by Truthfully. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Garcia. Any discussion? Can we have a roll call vote, please, Kathy?
Peters.
Yes.
Garcia.
Yes.
Truthui.
Yes.
Arnshorst. Yes. Hoekstra.
Yes.
Raymond.
Yes.
Byrd.
Yes.
Mayor Box.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda, special order of the day. Receive and ratify emergency actions 2020-1 and 2020-2 under the City of Holland local state of emergency. Mr. Van Beek, would you like to explain to council what's been done since the last meeting?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor, Council. Again, since the last meeting, when you took action to extend the local state of emergency and that entire process that's provided for in our ordinances and our emergency management plan, we took 2 emergency actions, and when I say we, that's a joint signature by the mayor and I, and presented to you tonight, even though informally I let you know what we did immediately when we did it. This is that formal part of the process where you would actually take action to, as stated, receive and ratify those actions. The first action was a variety of steps that we took with our payroll regulations and procedures. Our employee handbook is something that when changes are made, we present that to you and you adopt those changes. I think understandably in this circumstances, there's just all employers are doing different things with their policies and procedures. So that first emergency action describes what we did primarily for that section of time from when this started until April 1, because from April 1 on, approximately half of our employees are eligible for everything under the various federal and state rules as it relates to unemployment and the Coronavirus Act. So that's number one. Number two were actions taken primarily by the Board of Public Works, recommended by their administrative staff to the BPW board, and then before you. And then the city also paralleled that technically with the refuge contract, because the BPW really does that on our behalf. So that's where the mayor and I recommended that. And then also with the city business licenses, that's one thing that has become due in the middle of this, and we also waived any late fees as it relates to those business licenses. And again, remember, business license, it's not every business in the city. There's only specific categories of businesses that need to get those licenses. Kathy runs that program, does a very good job of it, and again, we're waiving those late fees. So I can attempt to answer any questions that you might have.
Yeah. Any questions for Keith? All right, great. Thanks, Keith. I'll entertain a motion to receive and ratify the emergency actions.
So moved.
Moved by Hoekstra, support by Truthfully. Any discussion? Seeing none. Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Garcia. Yes. Truthfully.
Yes.
Arsworth.
Yes.
Hoekstra.
Yes.
Raymond.
Yes.
Byrd.
Yes.
Peters.
Yes.
Mayor Box.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Great, thank you. And then item 7B, resolution to amend Resolution 2020.11 for council to extend the local state of emergency through May 14 and to cancel the special meeting on May 6, 2020. Thank you, Mr. Van Beek. Appreciate you being up there to explain exactly why it is that we're recommending this.
Yes, and my apologies for this one, as the report stated. Just in the craziness of everything that's going on, I did not register that May 6th was not a meeting that we otherwise were going to have, because typically that would be the meeting that we meet. But that was not on our agenda because tulip time normally would happen on May 6th. So when I made the recommendation to you to extend the local emergency through that date, because we'd be meeting on May 6th, I was like, oh, we're not meeting on May 6th. We really didn't want to change all the other notifications that we had where that first meeting in May would otherwise happen on the 13th. So this is really just to extend that local declaration one more week. I don't know if we're going to need to take anything. Like you saw, we took 2 actions so far. It's not like we're taking a lot of emergency actions, but this would allow us not to have a meeting on May 6th that at this point I would foresee basically being to take 1 action. So definitely recommend just extending this for 1 week. I'll take a quick moment here again, because I think there's continues to be some misunderstanding about what a local declaration of emergency means. Really, it's just allows us, as the last item, to do some administrative things that supports the fact that the governor declares a state of emergency, and the governor then makes a variety of executive orders. The city does not have any say or ability to change those executive orders. Quite frankly, as I've described it to some people, really myself and the employees of the city, we are agents of the state is the way that I describe it. So with those executive orders come down, we need to and we do follow those executive orders, and we will follow those executive orders. That really doesn't need this local state of emergency from you to authorize to do that or not. That's directly through our system, and again, we're agents of the state and are required to follow those executive orders to keep everyone safe. So again, this just does that, extend the local state of emergency for just 1 week. Sorry for droning on.
No, that's all right. Any questions for Mr. Van Beek? Yes.
Yeah, so are there other communities that haven't had a local state of emergency, and why would they not do this? I mean, I can see why it works for us, but why would they not do it?
I'll try not to comment on what other communities have or haven't done. I think that this makes sense It follows what we have put in place in our ordinance and our emergency management plan. And it's probably just to make sure, it's an appropriate stuff to make sure that things that we're tweaking that otherwise would require your approval to do, that we're doing those to make sure that we're staying on the legal straight and narrow. There certainly are other communities that have done this type, but certainly I know not all communities have done this. And they may have different requirements or allowances within their structure, so I'm certainly not going to say that they're incorrect for maybe not having this in place.
Any other questions, comments? Otherwise, I will entertain a motion to extend the local state of emergency through May 14 and cancel the special meeting on May 6.
So moved.
Support.
Moved by Truthui, support by Arnshorst. Any discussion? Seeing none, Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Truthui,
Yes.
Arnshorst,
Yes.
Hoekstra,
Yes.
Raymond,
Yes.
Byrd,
Yes.
Peters, Garcia,
Yes.
Mayor Box.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Great, thank you. Actually, I neglected to address item number 5, public comment. It's very important that in every public meeting, we give the public the opportunity to speak to council. This is one-way communication. I believe the reason why in my brain I neglected it is as I'm looking out into council chambers, I recognize the fact that there are no members of the general public that are here this evening, but I did want to make sure that I did officially open up the meeting for public comment, so I'll do that now. Are there any members of the general public who would like to address council at this time? Seeing none, I will close the public comment period and move ahead to item number 9, written petitions and communications. And this is actually the point in the meeting where we take in those written comments that have been received by council. My understanding is there are a number of them that were received through that email address we have. Again, that is publiccomment@cityofholland.com. Where you can make public comments. And Kathy, it is the practice of council to not read them in their entirety into the record, but just to have a summary of them, and then we'll make a motion to read them into the record. And Kathy, you're telling me you don't have them there? I do. Do you want to take care of it for? Yeah, thank you. Mr. Van Beek then will give us a summary of I believe there are 4 of them.
The first one is a gentleman that would like to make sure that we are monitoring the Holland State Park Beach and making sure that people are following social distancing rules. And of course, all of you know, and for the general public, the State Park Beach is not in our jurisdiction, but so that wouldn't be something that applies to us.
And I don't want to speak for you here, but I just want to make sure I understand what the term jurisdiction means. I just want to make sure the general public recognizes that it's outside of our authority. It's actually outside of the bounds of the city.
Thank you.
Yes. No. Thank you.
Yes. But we know, the second one was just a gentleman talking about the executive order and that perhaps taxes could be adjusted because schools aren't in session and we've closed businesses down. And so that was the comment. Third is that we should be instituting testing on a massive scale. And of course, that's something that is not something that we're responsible for. And then the fourth one was a thank you for the information that we've been putting out through the mayor's videos and others, and just communicating good information to the public. And for those of you that was a recent one, I think we added that right before 5 o'clock, but that is in your packet. So
Great.
Thank
Thank you. Yes, and all of these are part of the packet. They're all available through the city's website, and council has had the opportunity to see the full text of all of these. I will entertain a motion to receive these into the record.
I move that we receive those into the record.
Moved by Arnshorst. Is there support? Support by Garcia. Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Should we do a roll call on that, Ron? Are we good with we're good with a voice vote? Great, thank you. I just want to make sure we're crossing our Ts and dotting our Is. Next item, Reports from boards, city offices, and commissions, Park Township and City of Holland Retail Water Agreement, and I believe we've got Dave Coster from the Holland Board of Public Works here.
Hi, Mayor,
Good-
members of City Council,
evening.
good evening.
Good evening.
It's a pretty exciting night, actually. I know there's a lot of, trouble in the world and a lot of, people that are, concerned about the current state of affairs, but I think it's also important to note that there's a lot of business that is still continuing to go on. And tonight, this item here is really kind of a representation of a really important, I think, regional collaboration step between the City of Holland and Park Township, and really also Holland Township, as we'll discuss in a little bit as well. And so really for over 100 years, the BPW has provided water for the community, and over the years, we've extended that water to a number of different jurisdictions, as was talked about, different corporate entities like, township entities like Lake Town Township and part of Fillmore Township and retail areas south of the lake for Park Township and a little bit of Holland Township that's in the Y by Chicago Drive and 8th Street, for example. That we supply on a retail basis, and we also supply wholesale water to other parts of Park Township on the north side of the lake, and also the city of Zeeland. And for a little while now, probably better part of a year, there's been a lot of conversation going on between the city of Holland, BPW, and Park Township, as Park Township has been exploring whether it makes sense for them to continue to be in the business of providing retail water. And so what the two sides have done is studied this for quite a long time to take a look at what are the issues associated with the BPW taking it over, what does the current rate structure look like between the two entities, and is this Park Township's asset condition of their infrastructure at a point where it really kind of makes sense that the two systems are fairly aligned, and it would be a good move to take that over. So after a considerable amount of study, really among all the parties, there has been put forward a request for approval to enter into a retail agreement between Park Township customers on the north side of the lake and the City of Holland, and that would add about 3,800 retail customers to our supply. There's a lot of good parts that come into that I'll talk about, I think, that are benefits to all the parties, but just let me go through a few of the specific elements of the terms of the agreement. It's a 30-year agreement, and just as we do with all the different areas that we serve retail, the provision would be that the rates would be uniform throughout all of that service territory. So Park Township customers would experience and have the same rates that the BPW provides in all of its other areas, including the City of Holland. As part of this transition, there's a need to upgrade some of the meters within certain residents and businesses in Park Township, and so as part of this agreement, Park Township would be contributing $180,000 a year for 5 years, or a total of $900,000 towards that meter change-out initiative. And also another key element is that some years ago, the BPW purchased some property on the south side of the lake, actually along Lake Michigan in Lake Town Township. Refer to it as the Rosenberg property, and it was bought for the prospect that maybe someday in the future we would need to build another water plant on the south side of the lake. Well, we've never really moved forward on that at this point, but we still own the property. The agreement we had on serving wholesale to Park Township called for a reimbursement to Park Township if we ever sold that property, and the escrow, or the accumulation of that's been kept in a special reserve account, has grown to about $350,000. Well, with this agreement, that would actually stay with the BPW now, because again, we're providing that service to the entire area. So that also would be a contribution that's made as part of this agreement. Additionally, as part of the regional collaboration, we would actually enter into an agreement with Holland Township to provide certain maintenance activities in the Park Township area. They are already providing maintenance in the Wakazu Woods area and some other areas within the Park Township. So it made sense to kind of leverage their services that they have in that area and actually enter into a maintenance agreement with the BPW. We're still working out the final terms of that. That's not before you tonight, but that'll be in place by next month. We'll have that for the board and for the city council to consider, provided that we move forward on this agreement tonight. Some of the benefits I think that it really go to all the customers in the area by doing this is that, by the larger number of customers coming in, there's a risk mitigation that happens. If a certain major loss of an asset in a Park Township area happened, that would have to be absorbed just by the 3,800 customers in that area. Similarly, in City of Holland and some of our other areas, if something significant happened there, that would be really kind of constrained to, that customer base. So by growing that customer base, you really kind of add some economy of scale, but also some risk mitigation, and those are benefits really to all the parties. We've studied this financially. And also another benefit by this consolidation is that it's shown that really over the next 20 years that cumulatively the parties can realize about a 10% overall savings in rates cumulative over that 20-year period of time. And so there's going to be a benefit that comes to all parties as a result of that. In addition to Park, for them coming on, they will move from a quarterly billing system to a monthly billing system. And so that'll be easier to manage, and it'll also be consolidated in a good number of the customers in Park Township, because we already serve electric to some of those customers. So they'll be able to have that consolidated on their bill. They'll be able to have access to a customer portal that they don't have today with Park Township by being on the BPW's billing system. And of course, they'll be, being supported by an organization that has operated water systems for, again, over 100 years, with a full engineering staff and service crews that have been supporting the other retail areas, whereas Park Township really has no dedicated staff for handling utilities today. Other benefits, I think, is that it builds a regional collaboration. I think it's a good step in that process. We're also talking to Holland Township about the possibility of helping them with some of the billing for sewer, because they actually provide the billing right now for the sewer in that area of Park Township. So there's a chance that we could actually grow some of that billing support and maybe even out to other areas of Holland Township long term. But I think this is a good step in that regional collaboration. So the next steps tonight, if this is approved, is that the budget that is being put forward considers the retail sales impact already. So that would be something that is already available for you to understand what the impact is from there. We are going to be working on getting communications out to Park Township customers probably in June, letting them know, what to expect as this contract goes into effect July 1. We want to also get all that customer data into our database so it's all ready to go for that billing. And also the system assets within Park Township, bringing that in. So we would have that all put in place, and then by July 1, we would actually take over service, and the first bills would go to Park Township customers in August at that time. And for the next fiscal year, we're planning on rolling out these meter changes and getting people onto our automated metering system at that point. So, yeah, I really want to thank Keith and Ron, members of the BPW staff, the Park Township Board, and also the staff there with Howard and Connie and Susan, who have been really instrumental in putting this together. The Park Township Board has moved on this and adopted the retail contract. The Board of Public Works did that as well, recommended it to City Council for approval here. They did that action earlier this month, so now it is before you. And again, it rescinds all the previous contracts that we had and incorporates everything under one retail contract. And so I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Any questions for Dave? Yeah, Quincy.
Great job on doing this collaboration. We talk about regional collaborations, and I think this is a prime example of that, so great job with that. My question is, so after this, are there any talks or visions on seeing other services extended as well?
Well, I think, number one, we've talked about, growing broadband throughout our area as well. I mean, that's something that already is kind of, underway to a certain extent. But if you look at, again, that collaboration with Holland Township, they are the entity that provides the sewer service and provides the maintenance of that and capital additions and things like that in that area. But I do think as we move along here and we kind of grow the relationship with them and find what actually makes more sense maybe for us to do and them to do, I think that's where some of the bigger advances can possibly come because of the billing systems that we have in place and some of the other engineering support functions within our organization. I think there may be some ability to do some things in that area.
Question.
Yes, Nikki.
There are still some homes in Park Township that don't have city water, aren't there? They have wells.
There probably are some, and yes.
And so will you be extending?
That's a great question. So what's really one element of the agreement I didn't talk about is that this does not transfer the ownership of the assets to the BPW. It really becomes a contract to provide the services and to receive the revenue so that we'll have the responsibility for repair and replacement. But the township still maintains the responsibility and they're entitled to actually decide where to extend new services. So that's still an assessment process or a developer-funded situation. Once that developer or an assessment would happen, those new assets would be dedicated to the BPW's operation at that point. But that's still a township really to decide where that is going to go next.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Dave? All right, thanks, Dave.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it. Pleasure of council.
Move to approve the recommendation, the Park Township and City of Holland Retail Water Agreement with the effective date commencing July 1, 2020.
Moved by Truthfully. Is there support? Support by Byrd. Any discussion? Seeing none. Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Arnsworst,
Yes.
Hoekstra,
Yes.
Raymond,
Yes.
Byrd, Peters, Garcia,
Yes.
Truthfully,
Yes.
Mayor Box.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Great, thank you. Next item on the agenda, item 12E 2.1, approval of contract amendment with Republic Services for recycling services. And I believe Mr. Van Dyken is here to explain to us what's happening new with Republic Services, and he'll be up just as soon as we have finished disinfecting the podium.
Thank you, Keith, and thank you, Mayor and Council. I would like to just take a moment and answer Mr. Byrd's question. Per Brian, that's going to start mid-May at the very earliest, but it will likely be delayed, but it should be done by October. Okay? Sorry for out of order.
No, that's appreciated. Thank you. We love getting answers quickly.
So we have really two things to talk to you tonight about that go hand in hand. The first is a recommended amendment to the recycling contract and refuse contract with Republic Services. And the second is the approval of an application for a grant agreement, actually 2 grant agreements, but we'll get to that in just a second. So if you remember back in the middle of January, Aaron Thanel and Wood came back to you with a report from the Materials Management Task Force talking about our yellow bags program. The good news is that Holland has a very, very high participation rate in recycling. The bad news, as you can see on the screen, is our yellow bag program didn't fare so well. So at that meeting, you gave Aaron and staff the direction of going back and talking to Republic to discuss what it would take to have a 96-gallon container program for recycling for the city. So we've done that. Just a couple of graphs, you can see about 50% of our material is recyclable, but a much smaller percent actually gets recycled. And then that's the fate of their yellow bag system. So we went back to Republic. As most of you know, or may not know, some of you newer members, we have a 3-year contract with an optional 3-year extension with Republic. Republic took that contract over from Chef's Container when they bought them out. So we went back to Republic and said, okay, we know that you have startup costs. We know there's going to be initial capital costs that you're going to have on your side. What options can you give us, one for a 3-year and the other for a 6-year contract? They came back with $3.75 per month. That's 2 tips of that recycling container per month, or $2 per month for a 6-year contract. So 3 years, $3.75, the 6 years, $2. So a significant monthly cost savings by extending that contract out. As staff, we would recommend that the council go ahead and do that. And then that would also allow us, is we have a residential refuse and recycling contract with a 3-year and a 6-year term, but we also have a commercial contract that covers our city parks, our city buildings. Those contracts do not line up. We expect to bid those contracts out soon, and we would have that, that contract terminate on the same date in 2026 that this extension would allow. So we would bring everything into alignment, and then 6 years from now, we would bid it all out as one big contract instead of having them separate. So that's item number 1 on your list. I'd like to skip to the next one because it ties very much into this. If we go with a 96-gallon container, we have a big capital cost. So each of those containers is gonna, this isn't an optional program. Every customer is gonna get a container delivered to their front door for their recycling. So there's 2 grants that we're requesting the permission of council to apply for. The first is an EAGLE grant, Environmental Great Lakes and Energy, I think, is the new term. So what we were doing is we're requesting a grant of $410,000. There's a city match of about $100,000 just over, for a total budget of just over $500,000. This is a one-time purchase. Obviously, you do have to replace these carts as they get damaged and, you know, the lids fall off or whatever. But we would actually deliver those to each of the residents, and then each of the carts has, and I'm disappointed Scott isn't here tonight because he asked the question last time, each of those carts actually has a QR code or a URL where we can pass information to folks about what can still get recycled, because that information changes all the time depending on what some of our international markets for recycling is done. That is due April 28th. That's why we're here in front of you today. This is an annual grant, but we would be delaying the process of this if we waited any longer to ask your permission to apply for it. So this would dramatically decrease our contamination rate. That's one of the shortcomings of the yellow bag system. The second grant is the Recycling Partnership Grant. These 2 grants kind of dovetail together. This is for $150,000. There is no match, and it would actually allow us to put money towards that, but also put money towards education. The one thing I want to make sure everybody understands is this isn't just, oh, here's your cart, it's got a different colored bin, and you put your recycling in it. There's an education program that goes along with this that the Materials Management Task Force has discussed, my understanding, for quite some time. I have not attended those in the past. I'm kind of pinch hitting for Aaron in this circumstance. Councilmember Truthfully has and may have some things to add, I suppose. But with that, that's about all I have for you.
Any questions for Matt on either one of those items?
Yes, so will this new contract, is the old one up for renewal now, or is it supersede that? I mean, it's brand new starting.
So the 3-year had an optional additional 3-year extension that would be in 2023.
Yes.
So that there is some time left on the contract
Okay.
regardless.
But this'll,
This will
it's a
extend
new
it
one
even
going
further.
forward.
Yep.
till 20, okay.
Any other questions for Matt? I actually have 2. One is, at one point, we talked about it, and you said every other week, but then I just heard you say 2 a month. And I know that doesn't make a difference in a lot of months, but
Yes, every other week.
every other week?
Yep.
Okay, that's gonna be much easier for me to remember, thank you. And then the other is, I noticed there was a line item in there for RFID chips.
Yep, so I'm glad you asked that. So there's a chip that's actually embedded in the bin itself that allows that bin to be scanned and tracked. So there's some programming that goes on along with that, and I think that provides us some opportunities for some interesting opportunities in the future with that as well.
For tracking it if it disappears from my driveway, or how often it's tipped, or those types of things
Yep.
are the first things that come to mind. Okay, great, thank you. Other questions for Matt?
I just say, I see
Yeah.
the color in the packet is black with a gray top. Is that, are they
So
all?
that there's options. There are many different options. I actually have a bin, and it just has a slightly lighter blue colored top. So I think we'll probably send that back to the Materials Management Task Force when we go to make that purchase, and have them pick out the color palette.
We want them to all match.
All right.
It will be any color but orange.
You really highlight too that the delivery date.
Oh.
And the charge.
Yeah, so the timeline is actually at the bottom of the PowerPoint slide that you all can see. But this is out a little ways. So it's an Eagle grant, there's timing involved, we'll have to bid the carts, there's a lot of steps in the process. We're government, right? That's kind of the way we roll. But we don't anticipate these carts actually hitting people's driveways until approximately January of 2021. Those new rates that I outlined, that additional $2 charge, that wouldn't kick in until the carts are on the curb and people's recycling is being picked up this way.
Yes, Dave?
So let me ask kind of an elemental question, because that's how I roll. And I've gotten really used to, throwing all the recyclable stuff in the yellow thing and then throwing that in the other thing and then knowing, but just not thinking about where it goes after that. So now I get a cart has a beautiful new color to it that I can distinguish from the regular junk thing. So what do? Do I still have to put recyclable stuff into some sort of bag and then throw that in the cart, or do I just throw it all in the cart, and how's that work?
So
I can probably help with that one, Matt, if you don't mind. Since you
go right
opened
ahead.
the door for me
Sure.
anyway.
So you know a lot about
I happen to
Junk.
work for a recycling company.
Okay.
Yeah, so I
Help me
know
out,
a
brother.
little bit about it, and we had a lot of discussion with the Materials Management Task Force. This will replace the yellow bags altogether. No, you will not have to put them in a separate container. Everything that you put in your yellow bag, plus cardboard. Cardboard is the bane of the yellow bags right now, and you leave it outside, it gets wet, it gets contaminated. So with this particular case, and that's why we went with the larger unit, people don't necessarily break their cardboard down, but you put your egg cartons in there, you put your tin cans, you put your glass, you put whatever is recyclable at the time, hence the Q code that's at the top. But you can also then put your cardboard in there, and it's nice and weather tight and contained, and life is beautiful.
So it sounds like it'll be easier and hold more stuff. Is it still
Absolutely.
gonna have those noisy wheels on it, so when I roll it out at 2 a.m, I wake all my neighbors up?
Yes, that's an
part of
added
it.
benefit.
Okay, just wondering. Thank you.
That's part of the marketing.
Lynn?
Could you back up the slides a couple? I feel like I had but I don't, I need to see the slides. No, oops. Oh, where in the match, where does the match come from?
Oh, great question. So we have a solid waste fund. It's a separate enterprise fund. The dollars for that match will come from that. That fund is currently very healthy, and we'll still have a significant balance after the city match.
Okay, and then the next slide? So is that, the 150, will that cover will that be the entire cost of all of the bins, or do we have to put some?
So it's the two together,
Okay.
right? So there's a city contribution from the solid waste fund.
Yep.
There's the Eagle grant, and then there's the recycling partnership cart program.
Oh, okay, so it's all one, okay.
So it all-
This
well,
isn't
it's-
just the carts, okay.
3 different pots that all go into one big bucket
Got
and
it.
then take care of the cost of all the carts.
So this, in January, when it starts, that's when the $2 a month will get billed
That's correct.
to each customer?
Correct.
And that is more than, or different than what each customer is paying now?
Yes, that is an additional $2 per month fee.
Because I did get a call from someone who, wouldn't you know, we're changing and it's going to cost more. And they were, so I just, it's a better system, and actually recycling that works as opposed to broken bags. So that was my answer to that. And is that what we're hoping for with this extra money that we are spending?
Yes, the recommendation that came through the Materials Management Task Force, this will be more, there's not a question, this will be more efficient and will allow more of our material to actually ultimately be recycled versus being diverted to the landfill.
And so, and I remember Jay asked this a while ago, you would rinse out your cans and the things so that, if we're just throwing them in the barrel, it's gonna get kind of funky in there.
Yeah, that's all part of the education process. People should be doing that already, because contamination is a big cause for things not to be recycled. So why go through all the rigmarole of getting everything in the yellow bag if the can's still half full of SpaghettiOs.
Right.
That is a part of the process, and that education system and the education piece of it is very important, so that people are making sure that, yeah, everything that goes into the bin is clean and is in a condition that can be recycled. You know, the little square on the bottom of the pizza, between the pizza and the pizza box, is there, so that can be thrown away and the box can be recycled. So all those little pieces of education are very important, so that we're getting the biggest bang for our $2 per month.
Good, thank you.
Your Honor, can I make
Yeah,
just one?
certainly.
Other observation, and someone can check me on this, but hopefully one of the benefits of this change will be even greater participation in our recycling efforts. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe recycling is part of the total strategy contained in our community energy plan. So by an increase in recycling, we're also making strides toward fulfilling the goals that we've set through the CEP as well. Am I right on that?
Yes, I believe so. This is going to make things a lot easier for folks. When we make things a lot easier for folks, there's a higher participation rate. You know, as I said, I have a recycled 96-gallon bin. We have a little kind of a waste basket that in our pantry that the recyclables go in, and every 2 days the kids are supposed to put it in the recycle bin. So every 2 days I go out and put it in the recycle bin, right? But I think easing that, anything we can make easier for folks is going to make that really high participation rate just that much higher.
Yep.
Any other questions, comments? Yeah, Mike.
I just want to thank staff immensely for the work they did on this, because getting that spread reduced down from the $3.75 to the $2 was no easy task. So kudos to you, kudos to Aaron, kudos to the rest of the staff that did this. It's no surprise that I'm a big advocate of this, and I will continue to be such. We have a 54% participation rate right now. The goal that I put in front of the task force was minimum 75%. The more we can get out of the waste stream, the less the rate is going to be for that, and the potential for income as the world changes for the recycled material is that much greater. If we can get that rolled out to our commercial accounts, get that rolled out to our fourplexes and higher, which we do not have right now, so much the better. So anything that we can get off of the, out of the landfills and back into reuse, so much the better. We're in a sticky wicket right now with the China sword and a couple other things, but as natural resources, and I never thought I'd hear myself say this, but as natural resources deplenish, these are going to be becoming more prevalent, and we're going to find different ways to do different things with different items as it stands right now. So education, that's the $150,000 for the education, is going to go very far. It's going to make a cleaner product, a better saleable product, and with the QR code on the top, people are not going to have to rely on that little yellow tag that comes in your yellow bags right now, because that's outdated about as soon as the bags come out. So click the picture on the top and you'll know exactly what the market is, or what you can put in there and what you can't put in there right now. So again, to staff, thank you very much. I think this is a great recommendation. It's about 6 months later than what we wanted to roll this out, but who
You
knew
got a lot of
Q19?
material.
Well, who knew Q19 was going to be here and
Yeah,
or
that's
COVID-19 and mess everything up. So we'll move it back to, it'll give us some time to get the bins ordered. It'll give us some time to get some education out there, and we'll hit the ground running January 1st and get this program started. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions from council? Yes.
Yeah, just a quick comment. So I had, during the study, I had the opportunity to go to the recycling site and just kind of see that process and see, a few of us kind of dig through the garbage to recognize what wasn't being recycled that could have been, and what was contaminated in that. And I think it's just, it's encouraging and exciting to see that we'll have a system that is more efficient, more effective, where we will be able to have higher participation. I think all around it'll be better for the city, and really globally. But so excited that we get to change this up in a more effective way.
Great. Thank you. Yes, Mike.
I forgot the most important part. I want to also thank Republic for working with us on this. It's a great public partnership here. They stepped up to the plate. They know how important it is. They've been at every materials management meeting. So I want to thank them also for stepping up to the plate and working with us on this program.
Absolutely.
Great, thank you. Anyone else? What is the pleasure of council?
Motion to adopt a recommendation on the approval of the amended contract for recycling services.
So it's the first half, it's a motion on the first half of the two items that Mr. Van Dyken presented.
2.1.
Moved by Truthfully.
Support?
Support by Hoekstra. Any discussion? Seeing none, Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Hoekstra,
Yes.
Raymond,
Yes.
Byrd. Yes. Peters.
Yes.
Garcia,
Yes.
Truthfully,
Yes.
Arnsworth,
Yes.
Mayor Box.
Yes,
Motion passes.
thank you. And now, what is the pleasure of council in regard to item 12E 2.2, the recommendation to adopt the curbside recycling carts application for the Eagle Grant and the Recycling Partnership Grants?
Motion to allow staff to submit the grants for the Eagle and the Recycling Partnership grants, and follow the process and accept the money. We're going positive.
All right, moved by Truthfully. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Arnsworth. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Raymond,
Yes.
Byrd. Peters.
Yes.
Garcia,
Yes.
Truthfully,
Absolutely.
Arnsworth,
Yes.
Hoekstra,
Yes.
Mayor Box.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Next, item 12E 4.1, finance the proposed fiscal year 2021 budget for review and to set a public hearing. Mr. Van Beek will be with us in a moment as soon as he finishes once again disinfecting the podium. Mr. Van Beek?
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Different night. Typically, this would be, for those of you that have been here, 6 of you that have done this before, this would have been an attempt at as shortest meeting as possible, so then we could then transition into the first of 2 nights back-to-back. And my understanding that is, in the not-so-distant past, like even more than that, like maybe 3 or 4 nights of 4, 5, 6 hours at a shot going through recommended budgets. As you all know, we're not doing that tonight. With the coronavirus pandemic, it just didn't seem practical, wise, or safe to have a longer meeting than necessary and to pour through a 459-page document just on the city, not to mention the BPW budgets, or the Highland Energy Fund budgets, or all those that go along with that. So the action that's before you tonight is a resolution that would receive the city manager's recommended budget and set a public hearing date for May 13. So those are the only 2 technical actions that we are recommending and asking you to take tonight. I've also communicated, though, with you and for the viewing public. All of those budgets are available. Did I say one of them was 459 pages in all of its glory? So it is out there, and we definitely encourage all of you and anyone in the viewing public to read away. Some of you have more time than you used to. Some of us don't have as much time as we're used to these days. But go ahead and read those, and we will do some version of a budget review session. Now, when exactly that is and what exactly that looks like, I think is yet to be determined, and these days I think a lot of us are living kind of day by day, week by week. But one of the reasons for the recommendation of not doing those budget review sessions now is because May 13, particularly in these times that we're living in, is a long way away from now. So we have time. We felt we had time. So we will do budget review sessions. I've communicated to you, and I definitely encourage, if you have questions as you go through the document, please send those to myself, and I'll distribute those to the team so that we can get answers to those questions, so that when we do have the budget review session, I think it's still going to be in a world that looks different than what we lived in three months ago, right? So I don't think it's in anyone's best interest to have a 2-night session, 5 hours apiece to go through the budget, but yet we absolutely want to give it full transparency and full review and the ability to answer any questions that you might have or the public might have. We are working on some various tools to try to facilitate that process as best as possible. So I'll continue to work with an unbelievably fantastic team of not only of our full leadership team and all the departments and agencies that have worked very hard right in the midst of this pandemic to still put a budget together, but especially Tim Vogley, Michelle Price, Michelle Ferguson, and the rest of the finance team. Just what they've done over the last month in the face of all the other stuff is going on is nothing short of monumental, and I deeply appreciate it. So again, that's kind of the course that we're on that I would recommend. But again, you have that document in front of you, so I'd encourage you to keep doing your reading, generate questions, send those to us. And again, the action that you're taking tonight would just be to receive the city manager recommended budget and then set that public hearing date. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Yeah, just for clarification, and you did a great job of explaining it, but you know me, I like to try to summarize it in 2 or 3 points if I
Fantastic.
can. One is we're not approving a budget tonight. We're just saying we're taking the budget that you've given us so that we can review it.
Correct.
2, this budget was created prior to COVID-19 and any of the effects that might have taken place, and there has not been an attempt made yet to adjust it for COVID-19, correct?
Yes, and certainly not the most important page in the budget, but there is a city manager's budget message, and I outline that in several paragraphs in that budget. And really, there's 4 reasons that I'd point to of why we did not try to, in the midst of everything, adjust everything. One would be, quite frankly, we did not have time to make changes in light of the timing of, because again, most of the work from the department level happened before the pandemic. And quite frankly, from an operational perspective, we were focused on other things and didn't have time to then just redo the budget. Second of all, I would say there's nearly a complete lack of accurate information to make adjustments to the budget based upon changing information daily. So we absolutely would not feel comfortable saying, well, we think that this is going to change by this percentage. Just would definitely not recommend doing that. You know, there's also the recognition that a lot of times in need, we actually need more public services, not less. And that we are in a position, it's outlined in the overall budget, you know, fund balances and some of those things that we've worked really hard and that you've made a priority for a lot of years and made good decisions. You know, they're called rainy day balances in a lot of times, and you know, like, they exist for times like this. So we feel that we did not make adjustments to the budget, and we think that there's conversations that we'll all be having that we can weather this storm that we're in. And I look forward to having those conversations with you.
Okay. And then just to follow up, we're not looking between now and May 13 to make those adjustments or those changes. But as we do every year, we make budget adjustments, but we're fully expecting there could be bigger budget adjustments this year than there have been in previous years.
Way to summarize me well,
All right,
Mayor.
that's right. That's what I like to do. Other questions or comments from council?
Yeah, so I do have questions, as you saw my sticky notes. And so I write you and you answer me. And so if the answer I get, you know, what's been so nice, and this is, I really miss the study sessions because we don't have a chance to get input from everybody else, because everybody is coming from their own experience. So what if I want to take your answer and I'm saying, yeah, but, and share it, and how is that possible? I would like to share that, you know, because I have my own concerns, and of course, you know, we all did our visioning, and I just want to get an answer or about a new position that we're setting aside money for, and I have questions, and then I don't feel your answer quite fills it out, and I want a discussion.
Great question and fundamental clarification. Sorry, I didn't describe that better. So the intent is not that we'd have this one-way communication that everyone else is not a part of. So the intention is if you ask those questions, then we can even more succinctly hone the presentation so that I wouldn't necessarily send you an email back and say, hey, Nikki, thanks for those 8 questions, here's 8 answers. The intent is that then when we make the presentation in the budget review session, that we would incorporate the questions that are sent to us and that we would provide those answers as part of the presentation. We've had the discussion too, there might be something, and I just posed this back to council members, we have three newer members, right? So there might be things that you go, okay, I want an answer to this question, but this is probably more just kind of a question that I have that maybe isn't as pertinent to the larger process of considering and recommending, and ultimately you all needing to take a vote on these various budgets. So you might want to think about, like, it'd be fine if you have 93 questions, right? Sure. And maybe some of those questions are like, hey, like, I think that's something for everyone, and answer those questions. But this is just something like, hey, I'm just interested in, just for, again, sake of efficiency in this very unusual year that we're in. I would ask maybe you think about that so that the set of questions then that you'd ask, then we'd provide those answers to everyone. There's no intent here to like siphon this off and just, we still want this to be fully transparent, best we can, right, in these unusual circumstances.
And I know Mike, you offered too, and I appreciate that. So it's, and with the, I'm real interested. I don't, how we would gather and discuss all this. This is our budget. It's, and another thing that is, so set aside the budget for a second, but as we go along, you know, these so we had this visioning thing. We've got all these ideas of how we want to see, you know, we've got LGBT resolution kind of put on hold, and that's just the way the world is right now. But I want to make sure that some of these are really addressed at some point. The COVID thing is very important, the budget's very important, but our ongoing business too has to be somewhere along with it. I mean, eventually we're going to have to learn to juggle everything. It was all COVID. And then you get the budget now, it's kind of all budget, and then eventually we're going to have to learn to live with that, and you know, and the affordable housing, and then the energy, and you know, climate change. You know, the citizens want that too eventually. Now that we've kind of learned to live in a different way, you know, disinfecting podiums and everything.
So there were some questions in there, and I'll do my best to answer those, right? I know some of that was just like common, it's hard times, right, council member. Here's what I would say. We feel, and I hope that you'll find, and we look forward to, because a lot of time, you know, what's hard even in a 459-page budget just on the city side, and then we have BPW and others in there. You know, there might be line items that kind of make sense at this point to Tim and I, but what we like in the budget review sessions is we can really highlight those in such a way and say, hey, this was a council priority, and here are things that if you just read it and it might be buried in a line item that we want to highlight and say, here's how we believe that the budget that we're presenting highlights the council priorities that you've set. So that would be one answer. So we look forward to having what typically is, right, that budget review session where so we can highlight those and present those and answer questions about those. So that's kind of a budget portion of the answer to your question, Nikki. The other is just reality. Matt and I think we talk every morning when we gather, and we kind of have said now it's 5 weeks, right? We said for 5 weeks, pretty much every morning, Matt's gonna nod his head like, maybe today's gonna be the day where we can find a half hour to work on something other than COVID. And quite frankly, this is kind of that time of the year where it's one of the busier times of the year for other things where, I mean, budget prep, and I'm gonna mention in a second, business plan and strategic plan and all those types of things. It's an extremely busy portion of the year. And for 5 weeks, and this isn't just Assistant City Manager Van Dyken and myself, really, we haven't been able to devote our time and attention to those things. And I think everyone understands that, but there is that reality. So we're gonna have to figure out how we can begin to shift to those things. The last couple of days, a few times I've seen a little glimmer and then something happens, right? And one of those is this would be the time of year where not only would I've already had the last quarterly report for the business plan that you all adopted last year that we're moving through, I'll let you know that everything as far as an assigned deadline in that was hit except for talking about our financial policies. Now, there are a lot of things in there that are kind of like ongoing that we're working on those, but like if you go to last year's plan and said, okay, there was like Keith and staff was accountable to do this by such and such a date. The only one that we haven't hit, and because we otherwise hadn't gotten to it, was a review of our fiscal policies. But I haven't been able to update that report to give you that report, which otherwise I would have had for you of April 1. And as important, I haven't been able to prepare the business strategic plan that I would have given you along with the budget, and that you would have been kind of viewing that again moving forward, just quite frankly because I haven't had time because we're, all COVID all the time. Now, that doesn't mean that we're gonna pick those things up. The community expects us to move forward. It's really cool tonight. I kind of celebrated my own way that between recycling and the Park Township water agreement, hey, those were awesome. Those were things that were working. The 16th Street stuff that we approved tonight, those are things where we want to be ready when we can, that those projects move forward. We have big hopes and dreams and assignments and responsibilities that we need to keep those things moving. We're just in that time right now where it's not today, but we'll get there.
Yeah, well, and we can share, we can, if there's a way we can help in other ways, because I see the burden where the burden is here, and that isn't fair either, so, I mean, it's.
I don't know if it's not fair, the support that the larger community, that our staff, and that you guys have given us have been fantastic, so no one's feeling sorry for ourselves, but I hear you, Nikki, and we're gonna pick these things up and we're gonna keep moving forward. It's just, we're going to.
If we can help in any way.
Great, thank you. Dave?
Thank you, Your Honor. I have a number of questions rolling around in my head, but I want to ask a couple that are kind of more procedural, I guess. First of all, we are in a bit of a conundrum, as you've just described. I mean, I've been through a number of those long budget meetings, and some of it is kind of could have been pared down, but there's a lot of information there that by necessity has to be discussed because it relates to priorities and goals and stuff. And so it's a necessary process, and we all understand that. And we all understand that staff hasn't had the time because of current circumstances to devote to that. We get that. So it's like, what are we going to do with this, And I don't really know exactly, so sorry, I don't have all the answers.
We're figuring it out.
Yeah, so a couple of questions. First of all, there is a point in the process where, and this may be it, I'm asking for clarification, where not only do we recommend the budget, but we set the millage rate, which at a future date can be reduced, but it cannot be raised. And Brother Mike, you can probably help me with this because you've been in those trenches longer than I have. And I'm wondering if by taking action on this tonight, if we are in fact setting that millage rate, we're not. So when does that happen?
May 13th.
Okay.
May 13,
But,
sorry,
okay.
May 13 would typically be the date where not only would you have the public hearing. Historically, you've had the public hearing, but you've also taken action on the budget at that meeting, which also extends to setting the millage rate.
So on May 13, when we have the public hearing, is that the same date necessarily that we have to adopt the budget?
The charter says it has to be the first meeting in May
Okay.
that we set the budget, so that would be that.
So someone can help me here. Historically, there's been this time period between when we set that millage rate for the public to know and the point at which we have the public hearing and the actual adoption of the budget. So there was a period of time where that millage rate could be considered. Again, we can't raise it at the later date, but we could reduce it. And I recall this vividly because we've run into that on several
Typically,
occasions.
this would be the night that that millage rate would have been set, so that there was some discussions going in, this meeting or the next meeting, but typically this time, so that there could be the discussion, so that when we adopt it, things have been out there.
So then, this is my understanding then, that with our action tonight, that millage rate still remains in a bit of a fluid state until the public hearing when we actually set it in stone. Am I correct in that?
Yeah, if the millage rate information is in your packets,
Right,
and it recommends the same rate that we have for the past several years.
right.
So, if you wanted to reduce that rate, that would be something that would impact the budget in its revenues, right? So, you would need-
Okay, but say for whatever reason, we decided we wanted to raise the rate. Could we do that then at the public hearing? This is,
We published the millage rates, so no, we did not raise them at that point in time.
so the answer to my initial question then is, by our action tonight, we're setting that millage rate, which cannot be raised, but it can be reduced. Right? Okay, thank you very much. It may not be a big deal, but
Yeah,
it would keep me up.
That's important, right?
good for people to know.
And I guess my other question, and this goes to Ron, we're dealing with the charter requirements in terms of the budget and when that has to be adopted. Can you just clarify what our options are? In a state of emergency, do we have the option of extending it beyond the typical dates, or are we still locked into the normal timetable? Sorry to make you get up. You look good too, by the way.
Thank you. First time in 2 weeks.
Mhm.
First time for a suit in 2 weeks.
There
I'm
you
sure I
go.
look good every day.
You look bad otherwise, right?
Well, your question is really sort of uncharted territory, okay? The emergency, the local emergency declaration, well, first off, the charter says you shall adopt it in the first meeting in May, and that's the rule you have to go by. The emergency plan and Emergency Management Act talks about being able to waive and rescind and amend ordinances and rules, but it doesn't talk about what rules are to be modified. And given the intent to have maximum flexibility during an emergency situation, assuming that it continues on, it would be my interpretation that you would be able to waive not completely waive, but adjust a timing rule under the charter to be able to have more time caused by the emergency. But the bottom line on the budget, though, is you got to have a budget for the finance office to run when the fiscal year starts, so you can't back it up too much. But then
Right,
that's
yeah.
why the May date is there, obviously.
Yeah, there are practical implications. So bottom line is we have to have a new budget in place by the beginning of the new fiscal year.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
early enough for the finance office to get it set up.
I guess they would like that. Okay. I'll save my other questions for a while. Maybe I won't have to ask them, but thank you for that.
Great. Thanks, Dave. Any other questions, comments? Yeah, Jay.
So, what we're saying, if I want to understand this, the budget that's being presented here will be reviewed in some fashion on May 13, and then a vote on May 13 would be there to approve the budget.
Thank you for clarifying. Good question. Actually, I was like, oh, I want to make sure people understand this. My intent and recommendation is that there will be some type of review that we do with you and the public before May 13. So, and we can do that, right, because that review is a study session. So we can go ahead and do that study session. And quite frankly, again, in COVID time, May 13 is quite a long way away from now. So I would hope that, say, last week in April, first week in May, both, I mean, yet to be determined, because I just don't think it's helpful to try to estimate exactly what that looks like or when, but that we will have some type of larger presentation to you. And we're already kind of toying around with what would that look like, right? And I think what that would look like is we would have all the departments really distill down and say, okay, highlight the and the interesting things for those that you know, it's not like a department necessarily has one budget. Some of those departments have multiple budgets. So highlight within kind of one PowerPoint slide, or you know, like what is different about this budget, and what are some specific things that we think you and everyone should know. Probably not highlighting like, hey, this is a kind of a continuation from last year. That we would be able to download that to all of you probably prior to the meeting, rather than kind of doing the presentation type thing. That we'd have that element, and that also questions that would come in, then we would know that, hey, let's kind of pre-prepare for this stuff and answer questions, so that we can download all of that, so you can again do kind of that homework offline, if you would. And then that we would have as an efficient meeting as we could to review all that information, highlight other things that we think that we need to share with you, and then be able to answer questions you have, and then really importantly, right, for you guys to have discussions amongst yourselves. So that's what I would describe, Jay, as the tools that we're trying to figure out, so that no matter when that meeting happens before May 13 and what format that meeting takes, that we can give this very important document and process the due that it's worth.
Yeah. It's not, you know, I've gone through the budget. I think we probably all have taken some time and gone through the budget. That's pretty clear to me what you're recommending moving forward. To me, what's missing is a discussion among the 9 of us regarding our opportunities that we have going into next year, with priorities that really aren't reflected in the budget. I mean, I've seen where you've suggested another position and maybe have that part-time, add part of that to the community energy plan, those kinds of things. But speaking only for myself, and for a large part of the community, that it continue to encourage us to think in terms of shorter, not longer, and more aggressive, not less aggressive. It's not a 50-year, not by 2050, it might be 2040, it might be 2030. Staff can't answer questions like that. We have to determine how aggressive we want to set the vision for this community is, so that we can let the staff know what kind of money we're going to need in the budget to attend to some of those things. Now, I can't say we're going to get all that done in 1 or 2 meetings, but the diversity, equity, and inclusion priority, there was 9 people who said, yes, that's a priority, is not reflected anywhere in this budget. How do we attract, how do we know what budget we're going to need if we don't have a pretty substantial talk amongst the vision, the people who are responsible for leading the community into the next 10 years? How do we do that when we set a budget before we have those conversations? I found Mr. Hoekstra's suggestion to be intriguing. Maybe there's time to have 1 or 2 sessions where we could do some of that. I just, when I really consider the priorities that we have, and I've seen in the draft budget of where the things have, what you're suggesting, very little consideration to these priorities that we've convened, at least in the terms, after sitting here for 12 years, where I think this community is talking about priorities, and where I think their vision is, and where they're asking, certainly me, and I'm assuming some of us, here's where we want to go with this community. So I get the COVID thing. I know you're working your butts off, and I have the most respect for you and the staff there is in all the world. But this disconnect between what we want to see happen, instead of coming this way and say, here's your budget, has been frustrating for me.
Jay, I'd like to respond to that.
I'm
'cause
just a
that's-
minute, I'm talking to the city manager right now.
That's fine. Go.
Thank you.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
I mean no disrespect, but I thought we had a pretty good meeting about a month ago where there was some pretty good feedback saying, yes, we have to talk about this stuff. I don't have any answers for any of the people behind this dais about how they feel about diversity, equity, inclusion. Number one priority. I have no idea of the appetite we should or couldn't have or could have around taking a really good look at the community energy plan, which is, from what I can see in reading the report from the VPW, it's basically on hold for 10 years. I have not anything to do, LGBT are big priorities, not listed anywhere in here that's something we want to do. And housing. I know we've got some things going, but it was a top 4 priority that we take a good hard look at that, and it's just, we have a budget, and we haven't discussed it. So I think you and I have talked enough to know that how we do this seems to be a bit out of step. I think there's a couple things we could do in the future that could maybe bring the wisdom of 9 council people and the people they represent in their wards and the people they listen to bring to bear in a discussion that ultimately falls on the staff's ears instead of having it come the other way. And I think, like I say, I mean no disrespect, but it's frustrating for me to know where the discussions we've had about our priorities and review a draft budget that really has no reflection of any of those discussions. So, I'm sorry, you could talk about it.
No,
So,
go ahead, Mr. Van Beek.
best not me to say probably too much, because absolutely it's something for council to take a look at. By charter is the process where the manager recommends budget, and then you guys take it from there. The only thing that I would highlight, Councilman Peters, and for everyone, is what was frustrating for us is while the budget numbers, 459-page documents, and there's a lot of numbers plugged in there, what we were not able to do is what we typically would have been able to do is highlight that, hey, maybe there's money in a budget here that in our normal presentations, we would have been able to say, this is why we have money here, and it's not just money, but it's like, here's what our thoughts are, here's what our recommendations are with that. And that wasn't in the budget document in the way that we'd normally like to do. So I'm eager to share a lot of that because it doesn't come out in the budget document, so I'm eager to do that. Because in my budget message, I respectfully look forward to being able to show that I think we did present a budget that does reflect the priorities that you've talked to us about. And I'm eager to do that. And then the other thing that I would say is, Nikki talked about the parallel thing that we've started here that from my understanding you didn't have before is there's a lot of priorities sometimes that are not necessarily budget related. And we haven't been able to do that either. So I look forward also to, talk about that and reflect things that we're gonna do that maybe is a dollar amount attached to it, but it is a priority. So both of those, I absolutely look forward to talk about what is my responsibility, which is to give you a city manager recommended budget.
Yeah, Jay, I think that the meetings that we're planning on having to review the budget are exactly the time where you've got the opportunity, and we all have the opportunity to express those kinds of things. In my day job, I spend a lot of time reviewing documents with people, and I have a lot of people ask me, hey, will you send me the documents ahead of time so I can read through this? And oftentimes I push back on that because I say, you know what? There needs to be some explanation in terms of what it is that I'm presenting. Let me put this in context for you and explain for you what we're thinking of here, because sometimes the raw numbers don't necessarily show that. So I fully expect that we're going to have ample opportunity to be able to do those things. And if we get through that first budget session and any of us feels like we have not had the opportunity to be able to express what our views are, or that we don't think that the budget that has been proposed, and remember that, this is a proposed budget. This is not a budget that is being presented to us for an up or down vote. This is where we have the opportunity to be able to put our ideas into this budget as well and change it. If we don't think that we're there, we do, as Mr. Hoekstra said, have the opportunity to have a little extra time to do this or schedule additional meetings that are there. So give the process the opportunity to happen.
Thank you. My comments were around trying to understand whether or not we're going to vote on this on May 13th. And then I did hear that we are going to have some opportunity. But again, what I heard described was the staff talking about the budget, what's in the budget. The discussion, I think, has to come from here about what do we envision, what are we talking about when we say the priorities that we all came up with?
Oh, sure.
What does that mean?
Sure. City manager does not make the decision as to when we vote on that budget. We make that decision on when we vote on that budget and what budget we vote on within the bounds of the charter and within the bounds of time. And these are unusual times, and if we've got additional time to be able to do that beyond May 13, which it sounds like we very well may, if we want to take that time, this body is the one that makes that decision.
Your Honor.
Yeah, Mr. Hoekstra.
If I can just, sorry, Mike, if I can just make one last comment. First of all, I think just to reiterate, we all understand, I think, the current reality of what we're living in and how that nuances life for everybody. No one's been able to give the proper attention that, certainly staff, we've heard that, not been able to devote the time and attention that would normally go into this wonderful opportunity we have before us to look at 400 and some pages. By the way, all the other budgets are that thick too, so don't worry about it. We all get that, and we all accept that. I think, as I'm listening to our discussion here, I think we're coming to a place where we understand what our process is going to be a little bit better, but it occurs to me that I think something else is happening here too, and that is over the last year or so, we've been sort of rediscovering what the process is that we use to operate relative to our being a council and staff being a staff, and who does what and where we stop and where they start. And it occurs to me that we've spent a lot of time in identifying and visioning what our priorities are. And I think maybe we're in the middle of that process of trying to understand how that looks like in reality. And we haven't had the opportunity yet to discuss that amongst ourselves or with staff and coming to a clear vision, sorry to use the term again, of what that really looks like. If this makes any sense. And that probably causes a little bit of stress and a little bit of vibration on the part of some of us, that we want to understand that so that we know that we've done our job in creating a vision and making it clear to staff and hearing back from staff that they understand what we're talking about. And I think we haven't quite reached that point yet. Hopefully the meetings that we're going to have for the 13th will give us opportunity to come to a clearer understanding amongst ourselves and staff that we're on the same page, and that we have, as a group, confidence that they hear us, they understand us, and that will be able to point out to us, yeah, we heard you, this is where it's at right here, buried on page 363. Say, oh, I forgot that one. So you get the point, I hope, that I think we're still working through this process of understanding who we are and what we're doing, where we stop and where they start. And this whole screwy situation, I was just throwing a bit of a monkey wrench into probably a more gentle and predictable way of achieving that under normal circumstances. This life is just nuts now, so we have to be a little patient in coming to those conclusions. But it just occurred to me that that probably is what we're experiencing, and I wanted to lay it out there, so whatever other questions I have, we'll discuss whenever we get together. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, Dave. Any other comments from council members? Mr. Truthfully?
Thank you, Dave, for that. Helped me calm down just a little bit because I don't understand where these accusations and where these comments are coming from, with all due respect. This process is no different than we've done for all the years that I've been on council, right? You've been here a number of years. Well, we give priorities at the advance, the retreat, whatever you want to call it. Staff interprets what that is. They put the budget together. They make the presentation. This is what we heard you say. When we have that discussion, we say, you're spot on, or no, you're off here. What is different today than what I just laid out, except for the time crunch? Absolutely nothing. I'm sorry, Jay. I respect your opinion and the ability for you to have that opinion, but I think you're starting this off in the wrong context with making accusations that staff is giving us something that we did not give them. And that's exactly what I heard you say.
Okay, let me
Now,
clarify.
I'm talking.
Okay,
Okay?
all right, go ahead.
We don't need to be starting off on the wrong foot, okay? And unfortunately, I'm hearing that. We've got 3 brand-new people here that have never gone through this process. They're looking at the elder statesman and saying, okay, these guys have been doing this for a number of years. They don't know what the Sam hell they're doing? Yeah, we do. Staff knows what they're doing. Are they going to get it 100%? No. Soren didn't get it 100%. Ryan didn't get it 100%. Greg didn't get it 100%. Matt and Matt didn't get it 100%. That's why we have the chance to go back and say, okay, this is what we meant. Here was our priorities. You missed the mark. You were close, but you missed the mark. Can you tweak it this way? Can you tweak it that way? Absolutely. And it's always worked out that way. And I'm sorry, I'm hearing you say, this is a done deal, this is the way the budget's gonna be, and we're not gonna have a chance to talk about anything. Please correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, okay, thank you. I don't know that there's anything to tweak. I don't think there's anything on the table that we've given to staff that we can say, listen, for the last 6 months, in all of our community meetings, I've never seen the community come out on 2 issues larger than they have. We gotta revisit the community energy plan. I heard that loud and clear. I know that that's something we need to do, and I believe it. I think it's important. I personally think the climate is changing, and I think that it needs to be more aggressive. How do we have a meeting in a 2-hour period of time where we just, okay, let's just tweak that a little bit? I have no idea what you think about climate change. I have no idea about what the art of the possible is and what we can do together to take this community down a path that looks completely different. There's nothing here to tweak. When it comes to the diversity, equity, and inclusion, we don't have anything to tweak. What does that look like? Do we need to bring in a consultant? Where's the community? How do we begin to set a path next 10 years where this community begins to understand that we're not as welcoming as we should be? And it impacts so much of what this community is and what we do and where we're gonna be in the future. How are we gonna, you missed that a little bit, we need to tweak that. There's nothing to tweak. There's no vision. That's our job. That's what we have to do. If you remember correctly, with Soren, they'd say, listen, here's what we're gonna do on our Saturday retreats. You guys come in, you're gonna have between 5 and 10 things. Tell me what you think our top priorities are, and you got as much time as you want to talk about them and try and convince your colleagues of why you think that's one of the most important things we should think about in the next coming year or 2. We used to do it that way. That got us out of this 9 dots up on a board. The strategy is don't talk about it. Now I'm staring at a budget where all of that input and those priorities have the only thing we're basing on is 9 dots. We haven't had a conversation. A month ago, I thought we had a conversation. Everybody had pretty much saying, yeah, we need to talk about this. We need to talk about this. Now, I'll go back to the COVID thing. I completely agree with that. I completely agree. But I heard some things for the first time tonight. The staff's doing a great job with the information they have. Unfortunately, they don't have the vision they need from council to do their job. and I've heard you say that many times, is we're not doing our job if we don't give it to them. Well, we got a community energy plan to retweak, rethink, and refund, and that is, we can't have the staff come and say, here's what we think, and tweak it. There's a vision that's painted, that's gotta be painted, that it's not their job, that's our job. That's all I'm saying. And God, trust me, I have no disrespect for this, for the staff, for anybody. But at this time, at this juncture, at this history of this community, look at the 4 priorities that came out. That's a completely different direction than we've ever had in the 12 years I've been sitting here, or the 40 years that you've been sitting here. Completely different direction. So all I'm saying is, when does council get to lead? When do we get to listen to the residents and say, you know what? We have to be more diverse. We have to be more inclusive. We have to be more welcoming. It affects everything we do in this community, and I think it's high time. Thank God, finally. We finally got that high enough on the thing, became a priority. Community energy plan came out of nowhere. The climate's changing with that as well. I happen to believe that there's a lot of people in this community who are begging us, in fact, let us help, let us help. I got a letter from the president of Hope College, the dean of natural sciences, and the 4 heads of their major science departments all saying, we think this is important, we want to help, we want to get involved. Okay, what does that look like? I was hoping we could bring in, have a study session before the budget and get some information on climate change. What's the current science? I mean, Hope College is no schmuck science thing. They're rated in the nation for way above Kelvin, by the way, science, in the sciences. They produce more PhDs that go on and get chemistry than the Ivy League schools. It's a great school. They have all this talent. Are we going to talk about that? How do they play a role in this thing? How deep do you want to go? Do we use the same people who are doing the community energy plan now, or should we recruit a whole fresh group and rethink that whole thing? That's the seriousness with which I'm thinking about the community energy plan. I have not had a venue to be able to talk about that and have you say, Jay, I think, like you usually do, Jay, I think you're full of it. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. We're doing just fine. I have no idea where the mayor is on this. I have no idea where anybody around this table is. So to think we're gonna have a meeting and tweak a few budget items and get to the vision that I think is our job, I think isn't exactly what I'm talking about. So I hope that cleared it up for you.
It did. It also asked more questions, if I might continue on with this, because if you think, even if we had those study sessions between the time of our advance and the time of the budget, if you think we were going to get all 4 of those taken care of, you're sorely mistaken. I don't disagree. I agree with my colleagues. I'm fantastic with the fact that we had those top 4 priorities. I look forward to having that discussion. But to me, the budget at this point, the depth of the budget, we can't do anything with those items. We have money in specific funds that if we decide after the budget is set that we need to get a specialist in here, we need to do this, whatever decide once we have that deeper discussion, when we can have some time to really discuss it and not under the pressure of trying to get the money set aside that we don't even know what we're going to spend it on. That to me is foolish. That is not leadership. That is just, we've got an agenda, we've got to go get it done. Now, if we can get this budget put into place, knowing full well that we do have the reserves, we can pull it from here, pull it from there, setting our priorities, the top 4. And again, I'm looking forward to having the discussion. That's why I made that amendment, or that I made that motion months ago. I'm not scared of it. I'd like to have the discussion. I'd like to get it out on the table. But to have it strictly tied to the budget, I don't know what that's going to be, and I don't think we're going to have the chance to have that conversation in that short period of time. Just knowing over all this time that, yes, we have these funds, and yes, if we come out of this discussion and say, this is what we'd like to do, we're more than likely going to find the money. And if not, we've had the discussion, we've had the plan, by gum, it's going to be there next year.
Okay.
Thank you.
I buy that. My only closing thought as I listen to you say that is maybe our process ought to be shifted around a little bit. so that these discussions are had before we go into a budgeting session, so that when we have things like diversity, equity, inclusion, or some of the other things that we've never done before, there is no diversity, equity, inclusion budget in there other than Human Relations Commission, which is about $30,000 a year. So maybe we're thinking about a different process from where it's easier for us to vision, to pass it on, give it to staff, bring it back to the vision that they heard, and tweak that. So,
Believe it or not, we're saying the same thing, because after we had our advance, we had a couple of times, we had at least one time where we had a chance to expand upon one of the priorities. Unfortunately, because of the situation, we have not had those study sessions where I believe that we would have had a chance to have more of those. So we are saying the same thing. We're gonna get the process. If all things were equal, we probably would have had a lot more discussion by this point, okay? So, enough. Thank you.
And that's just what I was going to say. This has been a great discussion. I mean, this is what we did miss with our study sessions, because I resonate with your comments, Jay. I mean, you know, we have these things, and where are they in the budget? And yet, we're all cognizant of them. Some don't cost money necessarily. You can make a resolution with LGBT. You can make a climate change resolution without taking all the time and the money and the effort to get into this community energy plan. You can say, this is what, you know, what the citizens want. You can make a statement. But as we go through this, I'm glad to hear that this will come. If we can't do it now, we need to have this discussion. You need to know where we stand on all these issues, because we had a vision and it's embedded in here somewhere. That's good to know. You know, it's always easy to say, yeah, don't worry about it. We'll get to it. And we don't, do we really mean that? I do think we do mean that, and I don't think it will slide. I think we all have that good intention from the advance. So that keeps me going, and everything I've seen in the city of Holland tells me that also. We have that belief, we take that, but we have to be careful, because the COVID is huge. It's overtaking our lives, and maybe it will be for the rest of the year, for 2 years. But this is important, and having this budget and always keeping this in mind, so when we have the time, we know our feelings on this. These are important issues and visions, and we'll just have to, and we'll always be at you, don't worry. Somebody will always be reminding you. Somebody will. We won't go away, so I'm glad to have this discussion. You know, it's good to see the old guard discuss.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions from council? Otherwise, I will entertain a motion to receive the budget.
I would like to make a motion to adopt the resolution. However, there has to be an amendment to the resolution because there's an error in the first or the third sentence. The resolution as it reads now is resolution of the City of Holland to present the proposed annual budget for the fiscal year 2020. I believe that should be reading 2021.
It says it on the.
So you're talking about in the heading, the
I'm
third
talking
line of the heading, correct?
Heading of the proposed
Resolution?
resolution, yes. So that would be, it's just a clerical error. There doesn't need to be an amendment onto that. So I will make a motion that we adopt the resolution, thus setting the public hearing for May the 13th, 2020, subject to, I better not say subject, as the resolution states.
Moved by Truthfully. Is there support?
I support that.
Support by Hoekstra. Any discussion?
Yes, I have a question.
Yes,
Your
Mr.
Honor.
Hoekstra.
Going back to one of my earlier questions, I'm not seeing in the resolution a millage rate proposed specifically. And if I understand correctly, we need to do that, or am I wrong still?
It's included in the documents, it's part of it, it's there.
All right.
All right.
So
Any other-
by default, it's presented.
It's the same way we've always, what you're adopting now is the same
Okay.
motion that you've done forever.
It's a certain page number, tell you which it is, or no.
Okay.
Yeah, I think since it's included in the budget, we're incorporating the entire budget into this resolution.
I only ask it because I have an image in my brain, which probably is wrong, that that millage rate was much more specifically spelled out. But again, I'm older and I've been sitting around a lot, so. That's all.
All right. Any other discussion? Seeing none. Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Byrd? Peters? Garcia?
Yes.
Truthfully?
Yes.
Arenshorst?
Yes.
Hoekstra?
Yes.
Raymond?
Yes.
Mayor Bots?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Item number 13, communications from the city manager. It's after 8 o'clock, so nothing from the city manager. Item number 14, appointments and communications from the mayor, no appointments, but just some communications. I've been spending much more time in City Hall, I think, than the rest of the folks sitting around the dais have, and actually much more than I had anticipated when I signed on for this job. No complaints there at all, but it's been an absolute pleasure to be here and to be working with staff as much as I have been. This is an incredible staff, incredibly hardworking, adapting to the circumstances and to the changes. And as the city manager said, sometimes hour by hour and day by day, you wake up in the morning and you say, what will today bring? And this staff has done an incredible job on being able to do that. Not only staff here in City Hall, but those that are out in the community and those that are working from home as well have been doing an incredible job to do what the promise has been since the beginning of this, is that the city of Holland does not close. I do also want to point out there's been incredible collaboration within the community as a whole. A couple of outgrowths of that have been seen very publicly and very visually in the last week. One is the One Holland Initiative, and it's a group of folks from across the spectrum in the community making the commitment to make sure that we continue to work together through this. We help our community and our businesses both survive this, figure out how to transition into the days after this so that we can get back to a more normal life and move on with the projects and the ideas and the aspirations that we have moving forward. And then also to try to help make sure that this community not only survives this, but thrives in the days after. And I think that's been a real model for other communities around the country. Just a little anecdotal piece of information. The Downtown Holland Group today put out a coloring page of the One Holland logo and said, hey, if you want to hand this out to people and have them color it, you can go ahead and do that. And I shared it and was immediately flooded with requests from restaurants and people around the community that not only want the coloring page to be able to hand out and be able to put in the windows, but I think we're going to start seeing it in the upper floor windows of Holland. People have really taken a hold of that. And then also, if you didn't have the opportunity to see the video put together by Boilo Communications that came out last weekend, Holland Will Bloom Again, please search it out. It is absolutely fabulous. Talks about what this community is going to be doing not only today, in the days ahead, and in the years ahead. There's a true collaborative spirit in this community. I am going to be continuing the twice weekly communication videos. We're hoping that we're going to be transitioning again as we transition out of this into ways that the community is going to be growing out of the current situation. And again, that's a day-by-day, hour-by-hour discussion. Mr. Van Dyken asked me today what I was thinking about for Friday, and I said, I usually have no idea what the video is going to be until the night before or the morning of. We've even changed the subject matter the morning of based on what's happened in the community and what's happened in the news. And that's all I have to say other than what I've been saying for the last 5 weeks. Stay safe, stay healthy, and wash your hands again. So, motions, communications from council members.
No other.
Yes, Lynn.
Yeah. So I think since the last time we met, the governor has closed the schools for the year, and so the tagline was the buildings are closed, but learning is open. But learning isn't open for everybody because of the lack of good internet access for some people in the community. So I know Mayor and Quincy are sitting on that broadband task force, and Dave's here to hear it. But I hope that this experience really has sort of hit home the importance of broadband across the community. So we hope we can keep that in mind as you get back to those meetings.
Any other communications from council members? Yes, Raul.
Just a quick question, or maybe asking for an update, but I know a couple weeks ago, Councilman Peters brought up the, kind of some of the comments that he had received about on-street parking and moving that up. I'm wondering if there's any update, because I continue to hear that as well, so just kind of wondering where we're at with that.
I think I was
You were
here
the last
so I don't need to disinfect for myself.
It never hurts to be safe.
Yes. So we are cautiously and safely, but quite frankly, at a slower rate, clearing the brush from the streets. It is essential work legally under the governor's order. I've been challenged by that no shortage of times. I've been thanked way more than that we're continuing to do that work. But we have our staff, both to be safe, but also to make sure that if something would happen, the staff that does that is responsible for other essential work. I'll use Monday night as an example. If we had a windstorm and we had a lot of damage throughout the community, we need to have those gentlemen and a few ladies that work in those crews also available to do that work. So what we're doing is we're clearing the brush from the street. Probably unintended positive consequences. There's absolutely no question in anyone's mind that there is more stuff on the street this year than there has ever been before. So it's taking some time. I have received the strongest of recommendations from both Brian White and Police Chief Messer to not do anything with those on-street parking regulations until we've been able to clear all the debris from the street. And doing it on a onesie-twosie basis not only provides challenges, but the communication of that. So we're hopeful that we're slogging through doing all those clearing, and then when we'll do that, then I think that would be absolutely an appropriate spot. There's no reason at that point not to do something with the on-street parking.
Thank you.
Thanks, though, for giving me a chance to address that.
Any other communications, comments from council members? It looks like Mr. Van Dyken has reminded me of one thing that I forgot about. It's up here on the screen. For community needs and resources, there are lots of needs in the community. There are lots of opportunities in the community to be able to give back. You can go to careottawacounty.com for both a list of resources and a list of opportunities of things that you can do to help the community and help give back. They have ways for you to be able to volunteer from home. Lots of opportunities to be able to help support our residents and our businesses through this. So I have one more item on the agenda, and I would entertain. Thank you, Matt, for pulling that up on the screen for me as well. Also, an opportunity to share the stimulus. My understanding is stimulus checks have started to arrive and deposits have started to come in, and some folks are receiving that money and may be able to help share that with the community if they don't have full need of that stimulus in their own households. And Care Ottawa County posted the Share the Stimulus video on careottawacounty.com that encourages people to give back in the community in many different ways that there are to do that. There are a couple of very familiar faces that were in that video. Lots of community leaders came out and helped with that process. And Matt, are you going to play that video for us right now? I would love to have you play that video for us right now.
In response to this unprecedented crisis in our community, the federal government will be sending stimulus dollars directly to households.
For many in our community, the federal stimulus funds are a much-needed financial boost in these uncertain times.
For others, they present an unanticipated opportunity to invest in our community and care about our neighbours.
While these checks benefit many of us, the reality is that some individuals and families have a much greater need for these resources.
If you don't need the extra resources for your own financial stability, we'd encourage you to share the stimulus.
By giving to your favorite nonprofit.
Buying goods, services, or even a gift card to a small local business.
Ordering takeout from a local restaurant and tipping generously.
Giving to the Emergency Response Fund at United Way.
Or the Community Foundation of the Holland-Zeeland area or the Grand Haven Area Community Foundation.
Giving a little extra to family, friends, and neighbors who might need it more than you.
These are unprecedented times, but if we come together as a community to invest in our local businesses, nonprofits, and neighbors in need,
We can make it through this together.
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 Our community will bounce back strong if we look out for each other.
Help us spread the word about ways to share the stimulus.
And visit careottawacounty.com to find more ways to support the community in this critical time of need.
Thank you, Matt. It's upon all of us to work together to get through this, share wherever we can, help wherever we can. And a great place to start is careottawacounty.com. So please do everything that you can. And with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Truthfully. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Peters. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, everyone.